Do you find embarking on a diet or weight loss journey is mentally draining? Do you feel like your mental wellness suffers when you're trying to lose weight and that derails your progress? This is unfortunately such a common experience, partly because of how typical diets are purely focused on calorie control, and also because of the pervasive messaging that's out there that tells us that if we eat something bad, then we're weak or we've failed. I received a message from one of our listeners recently who said, I'm totally depressed. I cannot shift this weight. I'm 50 this year and I eat very healthily. And I receive messages like this all the time. So that's why I wanted to have this conversation. And I'm thrilled to have the incredible Dr. Carol Perlman join me for this. She is a psychologist, health coach, and married mum of 2 boys. And as you'll hear, she is a pro at helping people to maximize time well, maximize productivity, and create time for self-care and relaxation. So make sure you listen to the end because I just love how she wraps up our conversation and brings it all together with such an empowering message. And there are so many practical takeaways in this episode. You're going to be able to take some stuff away that you're going to be able to implement right away. Welcome to The Thriving Metabolism. I'm Louise Digby, women's weight loss expert, registered nutritional therapist, and founder of the Nourish Method to Lasting Fat Loss. It's my mission to empower you so that you and your metabolism thrives and you never have to go through diet misery ever again. Let's dive in. Okay, so welcome back. I'm here with Dr. Carol, and I'm so pleased to have her here. I think this is a really important conversation that we're going to have today because I really wanted to talk a little bit about mental wellness as we go through the weight loss journey. And part of the reason why I wanted to talk about this is because I see women all the time who are so fixated on their physical appearance, or maybe it's even their improving certain symptoms, and they can really get quite down on themselves if they're not seeing the progress they might expect. And then that can really wear them down mentally, develop a lot of negative self-talk. And that in itself not only is not good for us mentally, but it doesn't tend to help us to achieve our goals in the long term. So that's why I wanted to have this conversation today. So welcome to the podcast, Carol. It's so lovely to have you here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to be here and have this conversation. I agree with you. It's really important to work on the mindset as you work on a weight loss journey. So I'm looking forward to having this conversation today.
Yeah. And obviously I've spoken a little bit then about why it's important, but do you have any kind of more thoughts on why you feel it's important to kind of work on your mental wellness as you go through your weight loss journey?
Yeah, it's everything. I mean, if you are someone who's working on your health and working on goals and you read any kind of personal development books or you've listened to podcasts, follow accounts on Instagram, you see it everywhere. Mindset, mindset, mindset is everything. Because when you think about it, I was actually doing the math this morning. If you are working on a weight loss goal and you think about just the number of hours that you need to devote to this, it's obviously a really important goal. And I added it up and I came up to about 25 to 30 hours that it honestly takes a week to achieve your goals. And I'll explain why I'm thinking that. So anything that takes up such a big chunk of your time is going to require a lot of mindset and a lot of your emotional reserves to stay committed and to be successful day in and day out and do the actions that are necessary to get you to your goal. And so a lot of people talk about tuning into your why and really becoming clear on why is this so important? If I'm going to commit so many hours of my day, my week, my month to this one goal, I really need to know why that's important so that I can come back to that. And I've gone back and forth on how much I really believe that, but I was thinking of an example today and I realized, yeah, it's really compelling. So For me, I'm a tennis player and I love, love, love tennis. I would play every day, all day long if I could. And when I think about exercise, I know exercise is important. Weight training is really not my preferred go to. I would play tennis all day long. I'd go for a nice walk all day long, but weightlifting takes more motivation for me to do it. But I've been doing it really consistently. And why is that? It's because I don't want to get injured. Because if I get injured, I can't play tennis and I'm going to be really crushed and my mental well being is really going to suffer. So I am so committed, not even thinking twice about it. Once that clicked for me, that weight training is going to help prevent me from getting injured and then I can keep playing tennis. It was like the biggest light bulb went off and I don't even debate it. I get up and I go and I do what I have to do. So I think that's a good example of really tuning into your why and being able to come back to that so that you say, yes, I want to carve out that time in my day. I want to do it even if I don't love it, even if it's hard, even if it's awkward, even if maybe you feel embarrassed to go to the gym. It makes it really compelling when there's that bigger reason why. So a lot of people talk about that. That's really important for your mindset is to spend some time really figuring out what is your why. And I really love journaling as a way to get to the heart of your feelings. And I find that it's just kind of magical. And there is some science about the connection between our brain and our fingers. And whether you type or whether you write, all of a sudden answers jump out on the page that you might not have been able to verbalize. And so I find that that's a really helpful strategy as you're starting out to really figure out why am I embarking on this goal? Why am I so committed to it? And why am I going to put all this effort and time into it? There has to be something that's really important. You know, maybe you had a family member with diabetes and you saw how their life played out. You saw how challenging their life was, how many limitations they had because of their diabetes. And you say, I am not going to end up in that same situation. And I'm going to do what I can, whatever's in my power to help change the course for me. So I think that's the first thing I would say about that, that a weight loss goal is a big undertaking. But I have a lot to say about how to make it not feel big. And that's the mindset check. But in reality, it is like a bit of a part-time job. And in order to really stay committed to all the daily actions that you have to take to make that goal happen, really tuning into your why is going to be important.
Yeah, I completely agree. And it's so interesting that you use that example of tennis because I am exactly the same. I play badminton, and like you, I would play it every day if my body allowed me to. But I also know that I need to work on my strength. I need to work on my flexibility because it's a sport where you have to throw yourself around a lot and you need to get in some awkward positions to reach the shots.
Yep.
And so that's my motivation for doing those types of exercise as well. And, I think for most women, the trying to motivate yourself to exercise to lose weight is not that inspiring. And I think particularly when you're looking at a workout and all you're looking at is what's going to get me the most calorie burn. Again, it's not something that's going to inspire you in the long term, but also it's not necessarily the best way to lose weight either. So we've got to dig into that deep why and figure out something that's actually going to be more meaningful to you. Because whilst it can feel like weight loss is your ultimate goal, actually, your goal is probably runs a bit deeper than that. And it's probably more about feeling comfortable in your skin, enjoying your time, enjoying your life, and aging well as well, or whatever your goal might be. So we've got to get in touch with that and we've got to stay in tune with it as well. Because I think
Totally.
sometimes we do this work at the beginning, we think about why are we going to do it? What's our motivation? But then we can very easily lose sight of that, can't we?
Yeah, so I think it's sort of like a one-two punch that the first part is tuning into your why and figuring that out. And then the second half is okay, how am I going to make this really doable and even effortless day in and day out? And so making it fun, I think, is part of it. I bet almost every woman listening would agree that if you go for a walk with a friend, you are not paying attention to how many steps you've taken, how many miles you've logged. You're yapping away and before you know it, an hour has passed and you didn't even notice it. And you're saying, I could easily do another. That was so fun. We were just having a conversation. So that's one example of how you can make it fun. So you're not even aware that you're taking that action that's getting you to your goal, but you're just enjoying it and you're outside. You know, we were talking before we recorded how the weather is finally beautiful and just being outside is going to lift you up and getting the sunshine is going to be so beneficial that you can easily forget that you're logging your steps for the day. So yeah, I would agree that a second important part of the formula is finding things that achieve your goal but are fun. So if your goal is to move your body, and whether you're counting steps or number of minutes doing cardio or whatever it is, there are lots of ways to reach that goal. And so find the ones that are fun and enjoyable and make it as doable as possible. And of course, we also have to be able to do the things that we don't necessarily love. We talked about yoga and strength training, not necessarily our preferred methods. So we have to find the tricks that are going to help us get it done, even though it's not our top priority or top preference.
Yeah, 100%. We've got to, it's just got to feel natural, hasn't it? It's got to be something that we look forward to, that we enjoy. And like you say, it doesn't even feel like exercise. It's got to be something that is just part of our routine.
Exactly.
So sometimes when people are trying to lose weight and it's not going very well, or maybe they are losing weight, but they don't feel great, it can be a very negative experience. And I think people don't always realize that perhaps their mental wellness is taking a turn for the worse. So, what might be some of the signs that someone might look out for to help them realize that perhaps they need to spend some time and effort on their mental wellness?
Yeah. So if you're starting on a weight loss journey or maybe restarting, I think most women listening, this is not their first rodeo and they're probably restarting the weight loss journey for the umpteenth time. So, we talked about one of the first steps is defining your why and, why this goal is really important to you. And I think if we're all honest, in the back of your mind, when you're setting this goal, let's say I want to lose 15, well, we would say pounds, you would say stones, right? However many stones it is. Um, you probably have a time frame in your head. You have this event coming up, or it's summer, you're probably saying, yep, I'm going to do this and I'm going to reach this goal by a certain time frame. And I don't know, I don't have the stats on this, but I would venture to say that it's more common than not that it's going to take longer than you think it will to reach your goal, but that's not a bad thing. And what you see the experts saying is that a goal is, when it comes to a weight loss goal, almost the longer it took you to get there, the longer you're going to maintain your results, because anything you have to do to get there fast is not going to be sustainable. So I think that's one of the first concepts that we have to wrestle with, is the time frame that it's going to take and how you're going to manage that and what your expectations are. So hopefully if you're working with a professional, you're talking with them because they know this to be true. So you're talking with them to set a really realistic goal, and you're really kind of monitoring for those thoughts of, okay, I want to reach it by this time, or, oh, what does it mean if I said I was going to lose, again, I don't know the conversion from pounds to stone, so I'm going to say pounds, but I was going to lose, if I'm going to lose 2 pounds a week and then I only lost one, how am I going to cope with that? So I think it's really helpful to anticipate that it will happen inevitably. Nobody's weight loss journey is a straight path from where they start off and where they want to be with no bumps in the roads. If you could see the visual, it's a jagged path. There are ups, there are downs, there are plateaus, and everything in between. So we know, we can predict with a 100% certainty that you are going to face the situation where you wish you had made more progress by the time frame, a certain time frame, or you're sad that you haven't. And so you can plan out coaching responses that you're going to say to yourself. So the kind of work I do is called cognitive behavioral therapy. So the cognitive part refers to our cognitions, our thoughts, and how our thoughts have a very powerful impact on our feelings, and our thoughts and feelings impact our behaviors and the outcome of our situation. So we have to get really good at tuning into our thoughts and being aware of them. They're just like a little ticker tape, like on the news, that zips by in your mind. And you might not even notice that, but yet they can have a really powerful impact on your feelings and your behaviors. So part of the process, if you haven't done any of this work before, is to start to tune into your thoughts and recognize, is my thought helpful right now, or is this thought unhelpful? And the really cool and empowering thing is that we have influence over our thoughts. You can make choices. So thoughts might pop in your head and you might not have the choice about that, but you have a choice about what you want to keep around and how you respond to it. So if the thought pops into your head, I should be further along. Okay, great. You can notice it and then plan out, what are you going to say to yourself when that one little thought pops up? You're going to come back to it with a different response. And you may think about, make a list of all the signs of progress that you have made, or all the ways you're going to remind yourself that it's okay to be patient and that it's not the time that it takes to reach the goal is not as important as getting there eventually. And most importantly, maintaining it. You don't want to do this again. Do it once and be done. And so it's actually going to be beneficial. If you take a little bit more time, you're going to give yourself a better chance to really solidify your habits, because some of the same habits that or actions that you took to lose the weight are going to be the same ones that you have to hang on to maintain that loss. And so giving yourself more time in the end, in the big picture, is going to be more beneficial. So I like to think about two columns, a little two-column written exercise. So in the column on the left, you write out that negative thought. I should be further along. I should have lost more weight by now. I'm a failure. I can't do this. This isn't going to work for me. My body doesn't like to lose weight. This is easier for everyone else. Whatever that negative thought is, anticipate it, because you know what these are. Write it in the left-hand column. And then on the right-hand side, write out what your response is going to be. And print this out, write it out, put it on a sticky on your computer, on your desk, in your kitchen, in your car, wherever you need to, so that you can remind yourself. And you might have to rehearse this thought over and over and over, and the new thought over and over and over, until it really sticks and really drowns out that first negative thought.
I love that. It's such a practical strategy. And, this is something that I do when if I get myself in a bit of a funk and sometimes you can get yourself in a little bit of like a mental spiral where you're not being very productive with your actions or what's going on in your head. And I find that just reframing things is so powerful. And particularly when I reframe things from a position of gratitude and I really think about how grateful I am for opportunities or opportunities to learn or to change or whatever. So yeah, I love that. It's so powerful.
Yeah, I was going to say gratitude is always a great strategy. Gratitude is a great way to offset any kind of painful thought or feeling. Another thought that can be really helpful to work with is this idea of focusing on the output and not the outcome. So when you
Mm.
work, and this is true for so many goals, but especially with a weight loss goal, if you are getting frustrated about the outcome, come back to the output, which means all the actions that you've been taking. So have you been planning your meals? Have you been eating more vegetables? Have you been drinking more water? Have you been reading labels better? Have you been moving your body more? All of these outputs will eventually improve your health. They are improving your health and your well-being, and they will eventually contribute to your weight loss. So when you're getting frustrated on the outcome part of the formula, come back to the output and look at all your positive actions.
Yeah, definitely. And I really love what you said earlier about there being a 100% chance of encountering ups and downs, or I can't remember exactly how you said it, but encountering some sort of problem or some sort of scenario where you're not happy with your progress. And I think going into whether it's a weight loss journey or working towards any health goal, I think going into that accepting that there's 100% chance of there being some sort of obstacle in your way is a really positive way of approaching it, because now you're setting yourself up for success, because so many people are thrown off by various obstacles that actually, if with a bit of creative thinking or with a little bit of support, or maybe it's just consistency, you'll get through the other side of it, right?
Yeah. I've had this happen, and I'm sure you have too with your clients, where a client comes in and says, "Oh, I ran into this glitch over the weekend. I had this event and I got thrown off. There wasn't any food that was good for me and I didn't know what to do." And I'm part of me is saying, "Oh gosh, I wish I knew about this event, because we would have had a conversation and we would have planned for it to help set you up for success." But that's okay, because this challenge is going to come up again. So we missed it this time. So now we're going to deconstruct it. We're going to look back, figure out what the obstacle was, figure out what some solutions could have been. And now you're ready to go, because it absolutely will come up again.
Yeah, I love that strategy. And while we're talking about strategies, I'd love to get into that a little bit more. We've talked about kind of planning ahead and getting into your why. And I want to think a little bit more about like mindful eating, because I think so often a big problem can be the mindless eating and how, we're just kind of trying to get through the day. And so often we're going for convenience, or maybe we're not organized, or maybe we were organized but we're not really acknowledging the food that we're eating or even
Yeah.
processing the food that we're
Yeah.
eating. So what are your thoughts on how we can become more mindful?
So my answer I'm going to give you, I think, it might be a different spin on the question than you're anticipating, because I know there are people who will say, look at your plate, look at the colors, notice the textures, notice the sensations, taste it, chew it 10 times. And those are all great suggestions, but I want to introduce a slightly different angle that I think people might not have thought about before, if that's okay.
Mm, great.
So there's this book. I wonder if you've heard of it. It's called The One Thing. And it's written by a man named Gary Keller, he owns a big real estate company here in the US. It's probably could be international, I'm not sure. And in this book, he asked this question over and over again. And it says, what is the one thing you can do such that by doing it, everything else becomes easier or unnecessary? What is this one thing? He says it in every chapter. And so when I first read this book, I was waiting and waiting for the answer. Oh my God, he's going to reveal this magical one thing. And of course, what happens? He doesn't tell you what the one thing is. We all have to figure out what that one thing is for each of us because it's different. So I thought and thought, what do I think this one thing is? This was many years ago. And in the end, I decided it's use my time well. If I use my time well, then I can achieve every goal. So why I bring this up now and why I think that is relevant is that if I hope so. This is the focus of my business now is helping people plan their week and be intentional about their time, maximize productivity so that you can free up time for self-care and wellness. So that's why this is on my mind. So let's say you look at your calendar for the week. I'm going to give you just a quick example. You see this and it's all filled in. This is my calendar all filled in. If this weight loss goal is so important to you, when you look in your calendar, do you see all the activities that your nutrition coach or your fitness coach or whoever it is that you're working with or whatever your plan is, do you see that reflected in your planner? So do you see time to actually stop and have your meals? Are you creating time to actually have breakfast? Are you marking time to stop in your day and sit down and have lunch? Are you marking time to actually make dinner before you're starving and ready to raid the fridge and eat whatever you can get your hands on? Do you have time in there to go food shopping? Do you have time in there to do your workouts? If you're trying to get your steps, it's going to take about an hour a day at least to get all your steps in, let alone, whatever other workouts or weight training you're adding on top of that. So do you have that in your calendar? And so I think it's really hard to eat mindfully and to do any of those things if you don't see it and you're not actually creating a block of time to do that. So, I know we all have had days when they're crazy and maybe you're working and then you have an appointment and you jump in your car and you go to this appointment and you realize that you don't have time to stop until it's 3 o'clock. If you haven't planned for that in terms of your meals, it's going to be 3 o'clock. You're beyond that point of starving. Your body's now like in a blood sugar emergency, and you're going to be scarfing whatever you can get your hands on. But if you had sat down, and this is what I do in my calendar every week, if you had sat down and looked at that day and said, okay, I'm going to be on the go. I need to have maybe like a turkey wrap ready to take with me, grab it in my car, and I'm going to eat it on my way to the appointment, or I'm going to sit in my car in that appointment and actually stop and eat before I go into that appointment so that I don't get into that 3 o'clock emergency situation. And same thing with dinner. If you work until 6 o'clock, 7 o'clock, maybe you're running around with kids, then all of a sudden everybody's hungry and you're trying to start dinner at that time, forget it. You're going to be snacking the whole time that you're making dinner, or you're going to be saying, let's just get takeout because everyone's too hungry and it's going to take too long to make food. So my take on that answer of how do we become mindful is we create the time, we allocate the time in our weeks for our meals, for actually sitting down. It doesn't have to be 30 minutes. It might just be 10 minutes. And maybe you're waking up 10 minutes earlier so you can actually sit and have a proper breakfast before your day starts. And then you're getting into that situation where you're just grabbing something as you run past the fridge to get to your next meeting. So I don't know what your thoughts are. That's my spin on how do you become more mindful is you create the time so that you can actually stop and you have what you need and you can have a proper meal before you get into that state where you're too hungry and then you can't even think straight about what you're eating.
Yeah, I completely agree. I think after mindset, in terms of importance, after doing that inner mindset work, comes the organization side of things. If the people who are successful are organized, particularly if you're short on time, and it kind of sounds obvious when you say it, you got to make sure you've got the time to do the things that you had the intentions of doing. But actually, I so often see people who are having these intentions, but not really putting a lot of thought into how that's going to fit in with their day to day life. And I do it myself sometimes if I've had a busy weekend and I've not had time to make a plan for the week or I haven't looked at my diary properly, then I'll kind of like just scrape through the week and I'll get to the end of it and I'll be like, oh my gosh, why am I so exhausted? Why do I feel so bloated? And why do I feel like I've not had time to like eat properly this week? And well, it's because I didn't take the 10 minutes that it takes to just jot down a quick meal plan and a shopping list.
Yeah.
And,
But,
planning those little times that I need to just stop and cook a meal or enjoy a meal.
so that's an ideal situation is when we can do that, we can actually sit down and plan and get to the grocery store and have what we need and stop for meals. But inevitably, we all have those weeks that are more haywire than others. So another great exercise is to actually plan for a week when that you didn't get to do that. So you didn't get to the grocery store, you didn't do any kind of meal prep on Sunday, and you went right into your week. How can you still succeed? Like, what are the shortcuts that you can use to keep yourself on track in that less than ideal situation? Because it happens to all of us, happens to me too. And there are a lot of great shortcuts. We're very fortunate these days that there are a lot of shortcuts we can take. So I don't know in the UK, I bet you have something similar, but we have delivery services here. It's called Instacart. I don't know what it's called for you.
I It's probably similar to things like HelloFresh. You get like recipe boxes. Is that what you're talking about?
I was thinking
Mm.
grocery delivery. Do you have something like that where you
Oh
could put
yeah,
in?
like online food shopping.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
So, you could keep a list stored in that, set up an
Mm.
app, keep a list stored of your basic foods that you need for just a typical week, so that if you didn't have time to get to the grocery store, you can just go into that app, click, and get it all delivered, and then you have everything you need. You're going to pay a little bit more, of course, but in the scheme of things, when you're working so hard on this weight loss goal, if you have to do that, it's not your top choice, but if you have it in your pocket as an option, as a last resort when you're in a jam, I think that's really great. Or they're the free ones where they can at least do the shopping and then you can drive by and pick it
Mm.
up. And then I
Mhm.
think that around here, that doesn't cost anything more. And then there are a lot, I'm sure you go over this with your clients, but there's so many shortcuts like pre-cooked chicken, proteins that are very accessible. You can even buy hard-boiled eggs now. I mean, it's so decadent. You can buy the tuna, you can buy the canned chicken, the canned salmon, you can buy I know we don't want to promote buying the frozen, things that are cooked with lots of ingredients, but there are lots of pure foods that are prepared that still are really beneficial for your plan.
Mm.
The frozen vegetables, the frozen fruits, even the pre-cut, the pre-wash and the pre-cut vegetables and fruits. Like, yes, it's going to cost more. So I try not to do that every week, all week long. But if you're in a jam and you know that you're not going to have a lot of time to get things prepped, then maybe even have a name for it. This is a jam week and this is the week I'm taking advantage of those. And I know I'm spending a little bit more money, but I'm going to make up for it the next week when I have more time and I'll do all that prep myself. But there are lots of strategies available to us that can give us these shortcuts when we're in a jam. And that's going to be even the extra money you might spend is probably going to be a lot less than the money you would spend if you went and got takeout and you're going to feel a lot better.
Yeah, 100%. And if you have got the freezer space, then it's quite easy to have a pretty much complete meal from the freezer, but one that's actually really healthy. You can buy frozen salmon fillets and
Yeah,
things like frozen broccoli and cauliflower that you can just stick in the oven and bake it. Yeah, those are really great options. And something that I often suggest as well is you can, when you do have a week where you have a little bit more time, you can cook a little bit extra,
yeah,
freeze things in portion sizes, and they defrost really quickly. You can often cook them from frozen and you've got a nice home cooked meal which is ready in minutes. So it's a good idea if you're anticipating that you're going to have weeks where you're going to be busy, you're not going to have time to cook, then get a little bit of a back stock on some of your favorite meals. Most things freeze pretty well, and then you can have a good week or just the odd day where you can eat out of the freezer pretty much.
totally. Yeah, absolutely.
So, I wanted to talk a little bit about having support through your weight loss journey, because sometimes when I talk to people, I think there can be a bit of a lack of support in their own household. Not always, plenty of women have very supportive partners and even supportive kids, but sometimes I talk to women who the husbands just don't really get it. And I think, particularly when you're in this midlife phase and weight loss becomes that much more tricky, sometimes the hubby doesn't understand why it's so difficult. And they kind of feel that, well, you just got to eat a bit less and exercise a bit more and you should lose weight. But it doesn't tend to work like that. And that can be really difficult if your partner doesn't understand and doesn't think that you're actually putting in as much effort as you are. So, what would you suggest to someone who is lacking that support at home? How can someone cope with that and stay positive and focused?
I think of two different answers for that. So one is at the end of the day, what you can control is you. You can't control your partner and how they feel and what they do, but you can control you. So if you've worked out a plan, if they're working with you and they've worked out a plan and they know whether they're using macros or, sort of visuals for what a plate should look like for each meal. And I'm just going to use an example. I'm not saying this is what we would recommend, but let's just use this as an example. Let's say the plan was have your carbs at breakfast and lunch, and then at dinner, fill your plate with a whole bunch of vegetables and a great serving of protein. And that's going to work for you. So you have your carbs around your workouts in the morning. Let's just make that up. But your partner wants his carbs. He's a meat and potatoes guy, and he wants his carbs. He wants his rice. He wants his potatoes. He wants his pasta. He wants all that stuff at dinner. Okay. So I don't think we can expect that they would make the same changes that we are making. And I think you can absolutely succeed even if they aren't. So what I would say is make meals that have options for everyone, but you're in charge of your plate. So if you're making, let's say, some salmon and vegetables and mashed potatoes, then let your husband plate his or partner, whoever it is, let them plate it with all three ingredients, but you're going to fill your plate with your vegetables and your salmon, and you're just going to skip the mashed potatoes. And some people might find it hard if it's right there on the table, but they're trying not to take a portion of it. That can feel hard. It would be easier if it wasn't there. So you might try plating sort of buffet style, like keeping the serving dishes in one location off the table and have everybody make their plate so that then when you get to the table, you're eating what's on your plate. So it may require a little bit more inner strength to say, I'm sticking with what's on my plate, even though people around me are eating something different, but I think it can be done. And maybe over time they get on board and over time they understand what you're doing. Maybe they even want to make some of the same changes, but you can still succeed even if they aren't. And it's hard. Of course, it would be preferable if they would say, I totally understand what you're doing. You're doing great. I support you. Yes, we're going to have no mashed potatoes at dinner, but it can be done.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's something that just takes a bit of practice as well, doesn't it? Just kind of going against the grain a little bit, doing something a bit different. And, once you've been doing it a little while, it will get easier. And like you say, so often the other people in the household will see what you're doing, see that you're feeling better and that you're more energized and they're going to want a bit of that for themselves. So the
Yeah.
likelihood is they're probably going to follow suit and
Yeah.
and eventually you'll end up eating the same things.
Yep. Yes, or maybe even no, but you can still reach your goals. I would also be a little curious about what thoughts come up though in that situation. So you have a partner who doesn't want to eat the same way, or they keep saying they don't understand why are you doing it this way. And I would be curious for someone in that situation to do a little journaling to figure out where are your thoughts going when that happens. When your partner says, why don't you just have the mashed potatoes at dinner? It's not a big deal. Or I don't understand. Is that really going to work? Whatever they're saying, where do your thoughts go? And then those thoughts might be helpful, but they might be unhelpful. So you might need to plan some responses. Like if they make you question, like maybe they say, why bother? You've never succeeded in the past. Like you think this is going to work any better than the 12 other plans that you've done before. So you might need to have a new thought available that you're going to say to yourself when that comes up. I think everybody on a weight loss journey has self-doubt somewhere along the way. And so if your partner has some doubts, then that could layer onto your own self-doubt. So it's going to be really helpful to have some thoughts planned out for what you're going to say to yourself in response to that. But again, it's about protecting your own mindset and not trying to change them and not trying to convince them because you have more control over yourself. So that's what to do about what's right around you at home. But then I think it's also really beneficial to find other people who are supportive, who understand what you're doing, who are on the same page. I think a lot of nutrition experts these days have communities for all of their clients. So if they're online, whether it's a Facebook group or their own private platform, that's a great way to speak the same language as other people and kind of stay excited with other people who are doing the same thing, or find someone else in your life. I call it an accountability partner. And I think this is the most genius concept. I wish I knew about this many years ago. But the idea is that it's someone who you share your goals with and your plan of exactly what it is that you're expecting yourself to do, and you ask them to be available to you. So you can figure out, kind of negotiate, what does that look like? Is it that you tell them to expect a text at the end of the day saying, workout done, ate my 3 meals, drank my water, whatever it is. And that's going to sit in your shoulder. When you know you have to send that text at the end of the day, you're not going to want to say, oh, yeah, I blew that off today. And so it's going to make you more motivated to do it so that you can send that text and say, yeah, workout done. It could be someone who will do it together. Like my sister and I, we live in different states. We're both trying to do more yoga, but even though that's a push for us. And so we'll make an appointment with each other. We'll say Sunday at 4, let's do a yoga video, and we'll get on Zoom and we'll do the yoga video together. And nearly every time one of us says, I would have blown that off if we didn't have that scheduled with each other, but we're not going to, because the other one is relying on us. And so when we know we have to be there for someone else, it's usually, or for many people, it's easier to do that than to be there for yourself. So that's another great way. So they can be doing the same thing as you, or you can just ask them to be aware of what you're working on. So you can send them a text or a phone call, or you can do it together. Then I have local friends when I know that I don't have a lot of activity in my day, but maybe I didn't sleep well, so I know I might very easily blow that off. Then I'll make a plan to go for a walk with a friend, because I'm going to do that. I'm not going to blow that off. I'm not going to let
Mm.
them down. And of course, like we were talking about earlier, I'm going to forget all about being tired, and I'm just going to enjoy being with my friend. And next thing you know, the walk is done. So those are 3 different ways you can use accountability partners to help you stay on track. And then also look for people who are following a similar program as you, who are really speaking that same language, whether it's counting macros, plating a certain way, strength training, bodybuilding, counting steps, whatever it is. There's so many great ways these days to find community. Facebook groups are amazing. You could put in the search bar anything you're looking for, and you'll find a community of people also doing that. And it's a little trial and error. You might have to go through a few to find the right one. But I know I have met wonderful, wonderful people from Facebook groups who I really consider my friends. They add so much value. They support me, and they know more about the ins and outs than some of my in real life friends, because we're working on shared goals. So I think they are really a spectacular way to get support.
Yeah, it's such a good way to meet people, isn't it? And broaden your social circle. And certainly socializing or interacting with people who are on a similar mission to you
Yeah,
is so much more likely to set you up for success. I know for me, having an accountability buddy and having an actual appointment in the diary of go for a walk together is it just works so well because I'm never going to let that person down and I know that they're probably not going to let me down. So it just happens whatever comes up and tries to throw it off track.
exactly. Yeah. Usually one person is stronger than the other in the moment. So someone's going to make sure it happens. And then I also just want to give a plug for professional services. I
Mm.
imagine when you're thinking of your clients, they've already signed up to work with you. I think it's really important to recognize where we have a knowledge deficit or a skill deficit and rely on the professionals. We can't know all things. I'm a psychologist. I'm not a dietitian, so I don't know all things about nutrition. And so it's really important to turn to the professionals, learn what you need to learn, and work with them long enough until you understand what you need to do it on your own. But the professionals, from the fitness trainers to the dietitians to the coaches to the psychologists, if you're finding that if you're feeling really anxious, if you're really struggling with your mood, if you're really stress out, then you might need to work with a professional to address that so that you can remove some of those barriers and be successful with your goal. So really lean, I guess that's my main point, is lean in, lean on the professionals. I like to think of it as sort of creating a professional team.
Mm.
It could be massage therapists, it could be acupuncturists, it could be therapists, coaches, dietitians, personal trainers, tennis coach. Lean into them to the extent that your budget allows it, but there are a lot of really budget friendly ways of accessing these things as well. And, kind of there's no shame in that. It's actually a really great quality to recognize when you don't have the knowledge and go learn what you need to learn from the experts so that you can then later do it on your own. We're all human.
Yeah, definitely. And I think so often when you do reach out to an expert, it doesn't have to be a long term thing. Sometimes it can just be to set you on the right path. It might be connecting with a personal trainer to help you to understand what it is you need to do in the gym or at home to get the best results. And then once that sets you on that right path, you probably don't need to keep going with that in the long term if your budget is an issue. And I think so often it can actually save you money. I mean, in the example of like a nutritionist, I can't tell you how many people I work with who have been taking so many supplements that are just so unnecessary. They're spending a fortune on them. And we often whittle them down to just a couple of really good quality ones that are costing way less overall, but much more
That's a great
impactful.
point. Yeah, that's such a good point.
So, as we wrap up, I'd love to leave the listeners with a message of empowerment. So, is there anything else that you'd like to add to this conversation to wrap it up?
Yeah, there's one other topic we didn't get into, which we could have a whole nother podcast on if we wanted, but I think we would be remiss if we didn't talk about this. Going back to what we said initially, that taking on a weight loss goal, it's a big deal. It is going to require a lot of your time, your energy, your emotional resources, but there's a sneaky trick to succeeding with all that, and that is to really work on habits. It
Mm.
is a lot easier when you think about the individual actions that you want or need to take day in and day out to be successful. It is so much easier, more fun, and effortless when these become habits. So you're not even thinking about it. It's just what you do. Oh, I wake up and I stretch for 10 minutes. It's just what I do. I don't debate. Do I feel like it? Do I not? Is this the best thing to do first thing in the morning? Is there something else that's a bigger priority? You sidestep all of that. Oh, it's just what I do. And then you look back and you don't even realize, wow, I've been stretching every day for the past month. Like it's just effortless because it's what you do. So building those connections in your day, first I do this, then I do this, then I do this, and making as much of this a habit is going to make the whole process feel so much more effortless and fun and doable. And it's going to lift a lot of the mindset burden that you might have felt in the past and make it feel so doable to take these actions that over time, probably over more time than you would want, but over time will get you to where you want to be. So I would recommend there's some amazing books on habits. Atomic Habits by James Clear is one of my favorite books. And there's, that's the heart and soul of my business. And I would definitely say read up on habits, work on your habits, frame what you're doing as a habit so that you can sidestep all the debate in your head and just get so used to doing it that you don't even think about it and you're just living a healthy life, one that you can maintain forever. And that's just who you are and what you do.
That's such a good reminder. And I also think it's really helpful that you've highlighted that when you develop a habit, you remove all that mental chatter around should I do this? Shouldn't I do this? When should I do it? How should I do it? And actually, you just do it
Yeah,
because it's so exhausting, isn't it? That whole mental chatter of thinking about things. I know for many of the women that I talk to, they find that the whole trying to think what to eat and how much to eat and when to eat is something that is just so draining. And so often they might be just finishing off their first meal and they're already thinking about their next meal because there's so much confusion and lack of clarity around what to do. But actually, if we just start focusing on some key habits, it removes all that decision making and that mental fatigue that we get from all of it.
totally. Totally. You said it even better. Yes.
Well, that was such a helpful conversation. I know the listeners are going to find it so helpful to start implementing these strategies. If people want to find out more about what you do, how can they connect with you?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So you can find me on social media. I'm really active. So on Instagram, it's Carol Perlman. And my website is the number four, Healthy for Life by carolperlman.com. So you'll get lots of information about my courses. My podcast, Healthy Habits for Life, is also on there. So those are the two best places to find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining me. It's been really lovely, and we'll speak soon.
Great. Thanks so much for having me today.
Thank you so much for joining me today. All of Dr. Carol Perlman's links and socials will be in the show notes. And thanks for tuning in. And if you have any questions that you'd like us to address in the podcast, then we have a new way that you can connect with us. You can leave us a voice message through SpeakPipe. And all you got to do is go to speakpipe.com/Louise Digby, and you can record a voice message which will play on the podcast and will answer your question. So make sure you head there if you'd like us to cover anything. And I've got some really exciting episodes coming up. Let me list them out for you. We've got the importance of blood tests in achieving your weight loss, reviving your exercise routine for weight loss. We've got the psychology behind food binging, and we've got an episode all about age in your weight loss journey. It does being older make it impossible to lose weight. We're going to dig into that and break it down. So you can connect with me by searching at Louise Digby Nutrition on Instagram and Facebook, and make sure that you join me for my upcoming masterclass all about metabolism. And you can do that by visiting louisedigbynutrition.com or visiting the link in my Instagram bio. If you are enjoying this podcast, make sure you hit follow or subscribe. And I would be so, so grateful if you would leave a little review. Thank you so much to those of you who have done that so far. I've seen quite a few come in recently, which has been so, so lovely to read. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll see you next time.